Well, hello again, and welcome to another Reflected Reality Simulations video. My name is Graham, this is X-Plane 12.4 Beta, and we're flying the Laminar Research A330, just over central Spain at the moment. If you're watching the video on the upload date, thanks very much for tuning in again. I hope you had a happy Christmas. Let's finish the flight off and land at Malaga. So I had to restart the flight. The built-in air traffic control was doing a reasonable job of the approach into Malaga, but it wasn't the approach that I wanted to demonstrate in the video. So with that in mind, I've restarted the flight and we've turned off the air traffic control services. So let's have a look at the approach that we are going to fly. Looking at the flight plan, it says we've got about 243 miles to go. But I've used the progress page here. I've put Malaga Airport in and it shows 184 miles. If you remember back to the original video before we left Dublin, if we have a look at the flight plan, if I step through the flight plan, you can see that we've got this S-shaped linear holding pattern here. Let's see if I can zoom in on one of the waypoints in the middle. So this is a lot of extra track miles. And rather than fly that, I would usually try and negotiate direct to this waypoint here called LEMG. So what I've done is drawn some radiuses around LEMG. Because I've got the progress page here, that shows me straight to the airport from any angle. I'm going to work on the basis that at 39,000 feet, that's close to 40,000 feet. Multiply by 40 by 3, so 40, 80, 120. And then I'll add on another 15 miles for deceleration, and that gives me something like 135 miles, which means I need to descend in about 40 miles from the cruise. As well as that, I've put the radius rings around LEMG. As I said, I'll go into the plan and I'll show you what the radius rings are. So if I come back through the flight plan a little bit, if I zoom out, so I've got both of these rings are centered on LEMG. Ideally we'd be at LEMG at 7,000 feet and speed 210 knots. So from 7,000 feet up to 10,000 feet, that would be 9 miles required. I've added an extra 15 miles on to allow for deceleration, so that's a 24 mile radius, and then another 30 miles to allow another 10,000 feet. So that makes a flight level 200 radius and a flight level 110,000 feet radius. And that will help me monitor the descent as we go. So I'll keep an eye on the progress page here, and we'll try and get some weather for Malaga. Sometimes it doesn't seem to work if you're too far away. The built-in ATIS doesn't have global capability. It's still got to be close to the airport, which is a bit unlike the real thing, but I can understand that as a simulator limitation. So let's see, we've got the weather, receive messages, should come up at some point. Whilst we're doing that, I'll bring up the perf page here. I'll show you that we've got cruise phase at the moment. The next phase is descent, flying the descent at 0.8, converting to 290 knots, and then we'll just populate the field here. So I'm expecting to fly the ILS-Z for runway 13. Our minimums for that are 280 MDA, and we usually put in thrust reduction, acceleration, engine out, accel as well, but we can't do that in the sim. Just try that weather request again. It seems to be taking a little bit of time. So request ATIS Lima Echo Mike Golf, send. And we'll wait for that to come out. So I want to descend around about 135 miles. You'll notice there is a top descent that's not too much further away. That's because the constraints on this arrival, we've got a below flight level 230. So there's VULPE, and then there's another constraint down here that has us below flight level 230. So the constraints are set up to allow a reasonable shortcut to be flown, but what I want to do is basically fly straight to LEMG. We have weather. There we go, receive messages. Oh, no weather today. We may have to cheat and use the X-Plane map. Let's see if we can do Maybe just a weather request, see if it'll do this. Lima Echo, Mike Golf. Send. It's possible because I haven't signed into ATC that feature may not operate, but it's fine. Obviously if you're flying with reward weather, this is a little bit easier. I've got operate low selected, it'll be a flat full approach. Oh, we've got a message, there we go. I was just impatient. So I've got Malaga information, India, arriving runway 12, departing runway 13. I'm going to land on runway 13 rather than 12. Not uncommon at Malaga, land on runway 13. I've got a QNH of 1023, so let's set that just now. QNH is 1023. And what I'll do is I will set it in here and go back to standard. And I'll set it in here and go back to standard. Wind is fine, 110 degrees at 12 knots. Visibility's great, and dew point 5. So it's fairly pleasant. There's all the weather that I got requested with just sheer impatience. So what I'm going to do is essentially allow the aircraft to try and manage the descent as far as possible. I just bring up the perf page here, just so we can see the perf descent. I'll just bring progress here as well. So we are, oh, hang on, it was that side it was on, there we go, 140 miles. Let's put the perf over here. You'll notice it's got separate progress. That's pretty useful, so it's actually set up almost for 2-crew operation, which is nice. Perf on here, next phase. So when I start the descent phase should activate, and you'll notice that because the previous phase button will disappear. Let's see what happens. Let's go down to, how about we go down to, I think it's quite a low transition, or quite a high transition in Malaga. Let's go down to a 12,000, or flight level 120. So there is, push for descent. There's DES, Alt Blue, 12,000, that would be flight level 120. It's activated the descent phase, and we've got a sensible looking speed bracket on here. A little bit towards the VLS at the high altitude, that should really be protected there, but we'll keep an eye on it. And of course, if it's doing something we're not expecting, we can always fly the aircraft with a selected speed and a selected vertical speed, and that'll keep it nice and straightforward. So I'm going to really be using the blue rings here to monitor the progress of my descent. Oh, we've got the message finally for the other. Let's have a look at this. Was that the weather? There we go. You notice that when I get the weather data it shows inches of mercury, but when I get the ATIS it shows QNH, and yet both of them still use statute miles. Quite interesting. Doesn't cause any issues. Unit conversions are really bread and butter for pilots, so if you want to get both values, obviously just set it on your standby and then read the other one off. Very common way of doing it. Let's get rid of these sun blinds just now. That one can go up, that one can go away, and I'll use my shortcut key for sunglasses just to put the sunglasses on to reduce the glare. On my system that's Shift S, but it's also on the view menu up here, sunglasses. So let's have a look and see if we can get that shortcut sorted out. I've got 180 miles versus 123. So let me go direct to Lenny now. Lenny. Direct to. And there we go. 128 miles, 128 miles, and the progress says 121. So my guess, going straight to, is not too bad at all. And you'll notice that starting the descent around about that 3 times the height plus 15, you look at it, we're actually fairly close to the optimal profile now, which is a nice place to be. So we should be landing around about 14:18, and it's currently 13:55. So I'll put the seatbelt signs on about 20 minutes before landing in 2 or 3 minutes time. Let's have a look outside. So looking really good with the ortho photo scenery here. And the new clouds in X-Plane 12, the remarkable change over the lifespan of X-Plane 12 is really good to see. X-Plane 12 was a little bit underwhelming when it was first released, but now it looks absolutely beautiful. And with the addition of the ortho scenery, it makes it look like a really modern sim, really good sim. I'm hopeful that Laminar can do something with the ground textures. I don't think it's reasonable to expect streaming global ortho scenery from a developer like Laminar Research, but anything they can do to improve the scenery in the stock simulator would be much appreciated. Still very pretty. I've always thought it's a nice looking sim. Nice bit of shadowing on the terrain here as well. Although that could be baked into the photos, I guess. Right, how are we getting on? So it's in descent, it's comfortably on the profile. The profile has us, so what's it targeting? It's going to try and get to Lenny at 8,700. I'd probably want to be down there around about 7,000 feet or so, but there's a little bit of margin in it. So because it's flying a little bit slower, there's more descent capability. So I'm going to go thrust idle, open descent. Thrust idle, open descent. So it's got the bracket here. That bracket shouldn't be there when it's in open descent. It should just bring the power off and fly the speed target. Let's see what happens. We'll leave it in open descent, see if we get below the donut here. If we want to accelerate the descent, I guess I can just full speed. There we go. That's how it should be. So on the sim, it seems you've got to do both actions, like pull for open descent and then select the speed, whereas it should still be able to do a manage speed open descent without the speed bracket. But it's no big deal. As long as you're monitoring it, it's fine. So landing in about 20 minutes. With that in mind, I shall put the seatbelt signs on. We can put the terrain on the first officer's display so that we've got some awareness. So I want to be flight level 200, crossing this blue arc. It's about 20 miles in front of us. I need 8, 16, 24 miles to get down there, so maybe a fraction high as we cross the blue arc. What I'll do is use the opportunity of being up high to speed up. So it's in idle thrust, we've got thrust idle commanded. So if I wind the speed up, it's not going to put power on, it's just going to lower the nose to help the aircraft accelerate, and we'll get a slightly better rate of descent. See, a bit more nose down now. Not unpleasantly so, but certainly obviously so. Excellent. So we're getting there. We're recovering to the profile. It's about 8 or 9 miles in front of us. We're going to be a fraction high, but nothing to be concerned about. And this is basically all descent management is looking at the distance to your waypoint, distance to where you want to be, and calculate how high up you need to be, basically. I want to be 7,000 feet at Lenny, so that's going to be, shortly it's going to be, what, 15,000 feet to lose? That would be 45 miles, plus a little bit to slow down. we've got about 10 miles margin to slow down at the moment, so not really the margin that I'd want. We're still a fraction high. I'll increase the speed a little bit more and try and be back on profile for flight level 100. So I always try and allow a 15 mile margin on the 3 times height rule. 15 mile margin at the 200 and 100 point, such that you've got some space to help slow down. Hope it's all making sense. It's actually quite a nice aircraft to fly. It flies really nicely when you're hand flying it. I do find the autopilot a little bit frustrating sometimes, but I've learned to work around it for the most part. That's flight level 200 descending, I'm going to guess 12,000 feet. I can't actually remember the transition at Malaga. I think it's 12. Transalt is 13,000, so that's going to be an altitude. In that case, I shall set the QNH. I've got QNH 1023 set and cross-checked. I'm going to put the LS system on as well while we're here. We don't need the Mach meter anymore. That's a weird thing. On the EIS-1 aircraft that are the old CRTs, it will only show you Mach or the landing system. It can't show you both. But on these screens, the EIS-2 screens, it should be able to show you Mach and the landing system simultaneously. It's also not correct that it's blinking QNH here because it's got an FCE altitude that is below the transition, so it should be quite happy to show you QNH without it blinking here. But it is what it is. I need to go down at flight level 100 as we cross this arc here, which means I need 7, that's 7, 14, 21 miles. I've got about 19, so we are coming slowly back on profile. And Lenny, I've got 10,000 feet to lose to Lenny. That would be 30, 45 miles. I've got 42. So 10,000 feet, 30 miles required, plus 15, 45. So I've got about 3 miles. It is recovering onto profile. I've always loved the shape of the A330. It's a nice looking aircraft. I especially love the landing gear, how it looks on approach. Right, how are we getting on? I'm going to start dialing the speed back. So I come back to 250. And hopefully by this point we'll be cleared down to 7,000. So there's 7,000 blue. See, it's starting to go back up again, which isn't quite right. I'm going to use the vertical speed to stop it doing that. It should still descend. It shouldn't pitch up into a climb. So I've got 9 miles required. I've only got 5, so I'm going to be a little bit high based on my calculation. But because we're quite close in now, quite close to the runway, why did it not have the data? Oh, because I didn't do it on this flight. My bad. Let me get that from here. Received messages, ATIS. I'm sure I did this. QNH is 1023. 10. Let's clear the scratch pad. 1023. With a temperature of 16. This is the problem with doing the same flight 3 times in the one day. And 110 at 12. Was that 110? Wind 110 at 12. 110 at 12. And 280. It was the minimums and yes, I remember. I did half of it and didn't finish the job. But that's why it said enter destination data. So looking down here, we've got 53 miles and I need 12, 24, 36 plus about 10 for the speed. So we should be coming nicely under the profile just now. I've got 5,000 feet to lose to get down to the 7,000 feet for Lenny. That would be 15 miles on a 3-degree descent angle. I'm not quite doing 3 degrees. I'm just going to increase the BS. I'll activate the approach phase. And what I'll do is I'll manage the speed target and make sure that comes back to the final approach speed there. So I'm just going to let the aircraft slow down organically, shall we say. I've got a vertical speed selected. If the aircraft's capable of slowing down, I'll let it slow down. If not, we'll just fly the speed that we've got. I'll back the VS off a little bit just to keep it under the 50 knots. And now, although Lenny's a good aiming point, it's got me to where I need to be. I'm really just using the distance to the runway, and shortly we'll have the distance to the landing system as well. So remember I said I would like to have 15 miles surplus. At the moment I need 30 miles and I've got 45. So 3 times 10, 30, plus 15, 45. So it's looking quite reasonable. That's the reason for the little discrepancy there is my calculation is based solely on going to the runway initially. Or going down to Lenny at 7,000 feet. Cool, below 100 I shall put the landing lights on. And OSGET is also 7,000 or above, and then 6,000 for the next one. So OSGET is 15 miles, Lenny is 10 miles away. Only need to lose 2,500 feet, which means I'm under the 3-degree profile, which means I can fly a sensible rate of descent now. That's probably okay. I would prefer it if this wing Hampshire thing here effect could be reduced ever so slightly. It's very difficult to fly around Western Europe and not see the wing vapor effect. But it's a beautiful looking machine, a 330. Still flashing QNH. I'm just going to give that a recycle to see if it will stop doing that. Nope. I guess we might just have to live with it. So 8,000 feet, I'd need 24 plus another 5 for the speed, 29. We've got 36 miles. I think I can reduce the BS that a little bit further. I've got 10 miles to OSGET, which is 7,000 feet or above. With that in mind, I can go to 500 feet a minute, and that'll help us slow down. So I want to be roughly 210 knots or so by Lenny. Of course, the other way to do this is now to go back into manage descent mode, but it seems to be working out this way. You see it's got a bottom of descent arrow here for 7,000. I need 24 miles, I've got 33, I've got a headwind. Malaga's down there somewhere. Cool. So just approaching Lenny, 2 miles to go. I'm a touch on the fast side. I'm going to go for flap 1. So speed's checked. Flaps 1. Not much extra drag with flap 1, but it does increase the margins you've got, so the speed brakes are available if you need them. 1 mile, 10 knots to lose. bring that display in a little bit as well so we can see. There's 210 knots at Lenny. I need 7,000 feet still for OSGET. .28 miles to go. Need 21, so nicely under the profile now. So I've done my initial decel by managing the speed. That's a good way to remind myself to make sure the approach phase is active. If you forget about the approach phase and then you manage speed, it gets a bit more exciting. So there's Alt Star. I'll probably just select 180 for the time being. I don't need to go too slowly at this point. There's 180 knots selected. And after OSGET, I'm going to select 6,000 feet. So I'm in Alt, I'll select 6,000. And I've got about 3 miles to lose 1,000 feet, so I'm going to need that 900 feet per minute. That's sequencing OSGET. So you should be able to pre-select and then pull it. When you pull it, sets the current in the simulator. There's VS minus 900 and Alt lose 6,000. So I've got the slats out just to enable me to fly a little bit slower, but the slats aren't providing much in the way of drag. You see there's just the leading edge devices. There's nothing on the back at all. If you want extra drag, you need to config 2. Really. So 22 miles out, 6,500 feet. That would be 18 miles, so it looks like we should come just under the glide slope. If I reduce the vertical speed momentarily, there's minus 700, I might be able to prevent it capturing, or maybe just momentarily capture at 6,000, and then we'll go down to 5,000. I think we're going to capture. So half a mile, then we can go down to 5,000. There's the power coming up. Alt Star. Sequencing Nectar. There's 5,000. So I'll do pull, and then we'll go down. 900 feet a minute. So 20 miles, 6,000 feet. We're under the profile. 900 or 800 feet a minute should work. Temperature's plus 10. It's not unpleasant. I'll keep an eye on the temperatures. 19 miles, 5,000 feet. I guess we're cleared for the approach from this point. So there is Cat 3 Dual, AP1 and 2. Lock Star, Glide Slope Blue. Passing DVAC, I'm under the glide slope. I'm going to back the VS off to 500 feet per minute, and as we get to DVAC, I could stay at 5, or I could try and fly a continuous descent, just keep the noise low, prevent the thrust from spilling up. So it looks like we're going to be okay for 5,000 at DVAC. I'm going to wind the altitude selector down to 4,200 feet, which is the next constraint. My throttle axis is a little bit noisy, that's where the extra clicks are coming from. I think we momentarily got a power increase because of the throttle axis as well, that was nice. But we didn't bust the flap limiting speeds. Right, we've got landing lights on, and I'm still in config 1, so it's still that kind of fairly low drag configuration. I mean, I'm flying it nice and slow and steady here because it's only 16 degrees at Malaga in the sim. If we were flying this approach midsummer and it's 35 degrees, there'd be a lot of temperature error, so we'd obviously be a lot higher for the same baro altitude, which could make it a bit more challenging. So having the speed back is a good place to be. Just about to intercept the glide slope. I'll have flaps 2, so speed is checked. Flaps 2. And there's glide slope. So I shall set the missed approach out, which is 2000. It's a low level off on this approach. And 12 miles out, so still happy to sit at 180. If it was a bit turbulent, I'd probably want to bring the speed back a little bit. I'm only using 180 just to expedite the approach a little bit. You could do it manage speed and it'll just sit here at F speed quite happily as well. It's dead straightforward aircraft to operate. So we've got the seatbelt signs on, we've got the landing lights on, we've got
2,500.
approach phase active, Barrow's active up to 7. That makes sense coming over the terrain. We can see a little bit of terrain there. I keep meaning to look up if I can find an actual picture of a 320 or a 330 fitted with an alt button. Usually it's an expedite button there to make it expedite climb, expedite descent. I've not seen an alt button on an Airbus. I've seen it on a training slide, but I think it's an out-of-date training slide. So 9 miles, all I'm going to do is manage the speed, check that it reduces the target approach speeds, and just watch the aircraft drift back slowly towards F speed. Visual with the runway. So my kind of go-to is 160 at 6 miles, 170 at 7, and 180 at 8. And as long as I'm below that kind of profile, I don't need the gear to help me decel. So I'm still config to 170 at 7. It's struggling a little bit for the final decel now, so going to be a bit fast at 6 miles. I'll put the gear down. And as the gear goes down, we'll arm the speed brake, and we will turn on the runway turn-off lights and the landing light. We used to the takeoff light. Sorry, we used to just put the taxi light on, but these days the takeoff light is the norm. Have flap 3, so speed's checked. Flap 3, and flaps fill. So speed's checked. Flaps fill. We've got an ECAM memo with landing, no blue. We've got a missed approach altitude set, visual with the runway. It's looking like we'll be nicely stable. So I'm going to take the autopilot out. I'll leave the auto thrust engaged. I'm going to use the physical click here. Once to take the autopilot out, and once again to cancel the warning. And I'll just keep the flight directors in the scan. So we're 1,000 feet above the airport. We are stable and visual.
$1,000.
So it does tend to fly quite nicely. I've noticed sometimes in the final stages you can get a little bit high on the approach without changing much. I'm wondering if it's doing any manipulation of the flight model close in, but it's manageable. It flies really quite nicely. It responds like I'd imagine a 330 would respond. Just a little bit softer in roll than the 320.
$500.
I think that was my power lever, my thrust lever moving again.
400.
Try and recover that profile. Come on, back to where we need to be. There we go. Getting a bit of lag on the auto thrust now. There we go.
300.
So I'm just going to not worry about that flight director. I'll hold the pitch attitude and let it stabilise. So the auto thrust is getting me into an oscillation. The real thing doesn't tend to do that.
100. 50, 40, 30, 20, retard 10, 5.
Spoilers. Reverse. Green. Decel. Manual braking. Auto brakes are off. And we'll go up Echo 2. Oh, still the reversers. Make sure we are decelerating. And I think stand 28 would be a good place to park this aircraft. So, come off the runway. Stand 28 is very close by. Let me see if I can work out where we are. It's right there. It's not all the way in there. So I'll go via gate 5. Let's go nice and slowly just now. I'll take the landing light off. The strobe lights can go off. I'll switch off the LS. I shall stow the spoilers. Bring the flaps up. Switch off the weather radar. Switch off the TCAS. And we'll start the APU. The nose leg light can go to taxi as well. Alright, there's stand 28 there. And I also switch off the turn-off lights and the taxi lights. I'll just go into external view to help with positioning the aircraft onto the stand. So for precise steering, I would use the rudder pedals. For coarse steering, I'd use the tiller. I think we've got a stop mark there. Yeah, it looks like we've got a stop mark for 330. I've just got, as I said, push button or effectively push button brakes, so it can be a bit jerky at low speeds. That'll do it. Parking brake set. Right. The APU is available. We've had the cool down period. Shutting down. There we go, it's brought up the doors page. The slides have disarmed automatically, which is really nice. Just waiting for the N1 to spool down, looking for about 10%. The beacon's obviously still on as the engine's spooling down. Takes a little bit longer with these bigger engines. Nearly there. 10%. 10%. Right, beacon can go off. Seatbelt sounds can go off. We'll switch off the fuel pumps. 2, 3, 4. And we'll set the transponder back to 2000. And stand by. Great. We are on the stand. Let's get the ground services. I'll ask for the chocks and the jetway. Jetty's on the way. We can request ground service. The only thing I don't like about the ground service on the model animation is the fact it opens the doors here. That's not really ideal with passengers on board. You wouldn't open, well, some operators would, but it's not a great idea to open the cabin doors when there's passengers on board without the steps being present, because it's a very long fall for somebody who goes the wrong way. So generally not a great idea. I'd much rather see a catering vehicle or a set of steps there, or just not open those doors. You notice that once the jetty attaches, we've got external power. We don't need the GPU because the jetty brings the external power. And usually at Malaga they've got air conditioning as well, so like preconditioned air, which means I can switch off the APU. And that is us safely on the stand. And that bell will stop momentarily. So that's the Laminar Research A330-300. The first couple of times I flew it, I found it quite frustrating because it doesn't Airbus the way Airbuses Airbus, if that makes sense. But you can learn to operate it. You can learn to make it do what you want it to do. It's not quite the full Airbus experience because there's so much about flying an Airbus involves the automation, the flight guidance, and understanding the FMAs, and this doesn't quite do that. But it is included with the simulator. Doesn't cost anything to try it, and it's quite a pleasant aircraft to fly. As I said, it touches down really nicely. Whilst we're sitting here, let's just have a quick review. So I'll put it into replay mode and see if we can scroll back to the landing, because everybody loves a landing replay. I don't know if it's going to undo the ground services. Let's see how that works. Let's play. A bit too far back. See, I love the look of this landing gear. It just looks awesome. There's the classic approach view on a 330. Beautiful. And the reversers. There we go. I'll come out of replay mode. So thank you very much for watching the video. As I said, I hope you had a happy Christmas, and I really hope that you enjoyed watching the two videos for the 330. I don't know when the next content upload will be. As I said, it's a quieter time of year, so I'm cautiously optimistic I'll be able to make something in the not too distant future. But thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope you'll tune in again soon. Thank you, and take care.